How the U.S. stole a Soviet missile from Egypt in the blistering heat of the Egyptian desert. Hidden in the shadows of a raging Cold War, the United States pulled off one of the most daring secret and bizarre intelligence heists in history. Hello my friends. Welcome to Secret Agents Exposed. Today we dive into a story so wild, so shocking, so interesting. You won't believe it's true. Let's start. The mission: to steal an entire Soviet missile without firing a single shot. This is the real declassified story of how the U.S. smuggled a Soviet missile out of Egypt right under the noses of both their enemies and their allies. The Cold War arms race by the late 1960s. The Cold War wasn't just being fought in Berlin or Vietnam. It had spread across the globe. Every region became a proxy battlefield, and one of the most volatile was the Middle East. After suffering a crushing defeat in the Six-Day War of 1967, Egypt turned to the Soviet Union for help. The Soviets responded by flooding Egypt with advisors, weapons, and top-of-the-line military tech, including their prized SA-2 guideline surface-to-air missiles. These were deadly, mobile, and capable of shooting down high-altitude aircraft, a serious threat to American reconnaissance and Israeli jets. The CIA had a burning question: how powerful were these new Soviet missiles? And there was only one way to find out: steal one. The perfect opportunity. In 1969, following the war of attrition, Israeli forces, using American intelligence, launched a deep strike behind enemy lines into Egyptian territory near the Red Sea. During this raid, something shocking was discovered: a Soviet SA-2 missile system had been abandoned, fully intact, in the middle of the desert. This was a gold mine. If the Americans could get their hands on that missile, they could reverse engineer it, develop countermeasures, and level the playing field. But there was a problem. The missile weighed several tons, stood over 30 feet tall, and sat deep in enemy territory. Moving it would be nearly impossible unless they didn't move it alone. The covert mission begins. The CIA quickly contacted Israeli intelligence Mossad, and together they planned a joint black operation unlike anything before, codenamed Operation Rooster 53. The mission involved the Israeli Air Force intelligence operatives, U.S. engineers, and special forces under cover of darkness. Helicopters flew deep into Egyptian territory. Israeli commandos secured the missile site, disarmed the launch system, and began prepping the missile for airlift. What followed was a logistical nightmare. They had to detach the missile in pieces without damaging it, load the parts onto heavy lift helicopters, evade radar and Egyptian patrols, and fly the enormous cargo back over hostile terrain. With seconds to spare, they did it. The entire missile and all associated electronics were airlifted back to Israel and soon after flown secretly to the United States. Why this missile mattered back in the U.S., engineers and military analysts were stunned. This wasn't just a missile. It was Soviet military engineering at its peak. By reverse engineering the SA-2 system, American defense contractors developed new jamming and radar evasion techniques, improved the electronic countermeasure systems on spy planes, and most importantly, built warning systems that saved pilots' lives in future conflicts. The operation also helped Israel gain critical insight into their enemy's air defenses, giving them a strategic advantage in the Yom Kippur War of 1973. All from one missile stolen in silence. The fallout and cover-up. Officially, neither the U.S. nor Israel ever admitted the operation. Egypt, embarrassed and confused, blamed internal mistakes or sabotage. The Soviets, furious but silent to admit that their tech had been stolen, would have exposed deep vulnerabilities. For decades the story was buried, classified as top secret. It wasn't until the late 1990s that whispers of the mission began to surface. Thanks to declassified files, former Mossad operatives and ex-CIA analysts speaking off record today, Operation Rooster 53 stands as a masterclass in Cold War espionage, coordination, and high-risk intelligence gathering in a world of spies and shadows. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is knowledge. One abandoned missile, one black operation, a global power shift, all hidden behind diplomatic silence. This is the true story of how the U.S. stole a Soviet missile from the heart of Egypt. For more real spy stories, declassified missions, and Cold War secrets, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We're just getting started. See you in the next video with unique story.